you want. I would say that if that it's not possible that Jesus is a vegetarian, and my argument would be that if we begin by looking back at the book of Genesis, in Genesis 9, God says to Noah that he has the ability to eat animals now after the flood. This was not something that was allowed prior to that, but you have a specific allowance that's made in Genesis 9 when the law is given, and the law is not given by a different deity unless you want to adopt what's called Marcionism, and that would have its own set of problems. In Leviticus 3, there's the peace offering. And in the peace offering, it's considered to be a covenant meal. It's a ritual celebration where the person brings a sacrifice, which is an animal, and that animal is sacrificed, cooked, and it's shared by the priest and the communicant or the ritual worshiper. Likewise, in Exodus, when we come to Exodus 12 with the Passover, we read about the lamb that's slaughtered. That's a symbolic sacrifice representing the offering, again, like in Leviticus 3, the peace offering, but this time it's an offering where it's an innocent victim that's sacrificed and eaten that is shared by all of the Jews. And then as we move up into the New Testament, when Christ, the Messiah, comes, he fulfills all of these ritual symbols and actions. And in one way, one way that he does that is that he keeps the law of the old covenant, because we would say, and I can argue this textually, that he's the one that gave the law in the Old Testament. So in other words, Jesus is the one that gave the laws in Leviticus and Exodus about what ritual sacrifices and meals were to be had. And so when Christ lists himself as the Passover, that's another affirmation that he was the one that was intended by the meal, the sacrifice all along. Thus, it could not be possible for Christ to be the Pascha, as we call him in the Orthodox Church, which is the Greek term for Passover. He couldn't be the Pascha meal if he wasn't the fulfillment of the actual eating of the animal in Exodus 12. Likewise, in the New Testament, we have Jesus after the resurrection eating fish with his apostles, which shows us that he does not, even after the resurrection, reject the possibility of eating flesh or eating meat. The church also had to deal with this early on in the days of Paul. Paul wrote to Timothy and pointed out in the first, it's 1 Timothy 4. First Timothy 4, Paul says that people will forbid marriage and the eating of meat, which is a doctrine of devils ultimately. And then in the early days of the church, we have this statement from St. Hippolytus of Rome that there's also with us Indians, the sect of those who are called Brahmins, and they abstain from living creatures and all cooked food. And this is in his section describing the heresies that the early church rejects. Up into the 7th century, when you read about what St. John of Damascus wrote, on the heresies, he lists a bunch of early church heretics, such as the Encratites, who forbade the eating of meat. And for that reason alone, that was enough to castigate them underneath Paul's rejection of a Gnostic group. Likewise, in Luke 5, we read about Jesus telling the apostles to cast their net on the other side, and they catch a large load of fishes, which wouldn't happen if Jesus was a vegetarian or vegan or whatever. And then we have Peter's vision, which we believe comes from Christ, where symbolically the animals come down. Peter is told to kill and eat. Now, there's many more examples, but these are just kind of like the brief summary examples of how Christ is the one who gave the commands, both in the Old and the New Testament, that it's okay to eat meat. I apologize, I'm a little sick, so if my voice and if I cough a lot, it's because I've got a cold. Feel free to go ahead.
Carnivore diet got you down? Okay.
No, I don't think I have. I don't have a cold because of a carnivore diet.
Okay. Well, you bring up some good points, and I'd just like to say that from the beginning, man was created vegetarian. Jesus came to redeem us and set us back to the Genesis standard. I don't think it's Christian-like of you to use Exodus or Leviticus to justify a diet when in fact, you look at Jesus' own teachings, he would not do the same. He would take it back to Genesis and say, from the beginning, it was not so. I think you'll agree with that. Jesus, from the beginning, he's all about setting us back to the Genesis standard, which is Genesis 1:29, fruit and herb bearing seed. Kills nothing. It's the optimal human diet. It is the original human factory settings. But just to state my position up front is Jesus was a vegetarian. At worst, or best in your case, he may have been a light pescatarian. He may have had a comfort with fish. But I think we're going to show that his place of birth, the community he was a part of, his family members all point to a vegetarian diet. Not only that, you belong to the Orthodox Church. The Orthodox Church puts a heavy emphasis on a vegetarian diet. And we can get to all these points, later on. But you bring up Timothy 4. Timothy 4 has to do with meat. It does not say flesh or corpse. Timothy 4 says, they will eat herbs, right? It's down to herbs. Is that true? I think we're on a time lag here, by the way.
It says abstaining from meat, so I can look up the Greek word if you want.
Right. So meat does not mean all flesh. Going back to the Genesis definition, meat means fruit and herb bearing seed. It's not until Noah gets off the ark. And by the way, you bring up Noah.
Well, hold on. Where do you get that meats is herbs and seeds?
Genesis 1:29, herb and fruit.
What is? Wouldn't we look up the Greek word for meats? Why would we go to Genesis about seed?
From the beginning, we were created fruit and herb bearing seed. That's what meat means. There's a later.
Where do you get that?
In the Noahide laws.
Where do you get that?
It's in Genesis.
No. Where do you get that the word meats is seeds?
That is the broad Christian interpretation.
So where is that? Says who? I can look at the Greek right now.
Well, the burden of proof is on you, I guess.
No, the burden of proof is not on me because it's a ridiculous, outlandish claim.
Meat means food. It does not mean flesh or corpse. That's the biblical definition of meat. I would press you to prove.
No, I'm looking at it right now. The Greek word is broma, which means actual victuals or meat, according to the Blue Letter Bible, the Greek term broma.
King James Version, you've got meat meaning food. Every English version of the Bible, except your Americanized carnivore Bibles.
This is Thayer's Greek lexicon. What are you talking about?
Meat means fruit and herb bearing seed.
The Greek word that's used in the New Testament in that text.
Are you resting
your
position on the Greek definition of meat?
Wouldn't we look to the Greek definition in 1 Timothy 4?
The Hebrew interpretation and the early Greek.
Well, hold on. Why do you talk about the Hebrew interpretation? Why would I need the Hebrew interpretation of Paul?
I've got a loop on myself where it sounds like I'm arguing with me and you.
Why would I look to the Hebrew interpretation of Genesis when I'm going to what Paul talks about in 1 Timothy 4 when he wrote in Greek?
The early Christians all.
What early Christians? Give an example of this. Cite one. I cited you the early Christians like Hippolytus of Rome, who says that it is about actual flesh that's forbidden.
Now,
did I say that about
Origin?
Origin is a heretic. Origin is a heretic. It doesn't matter what. Origin is a heretic.
They knew Adam and Eve were created vegetarian. You're not going to rest your whole argument on this. Adam and Eve.
You've not made an argument yet in response to anything.
Are you saying that Adam and Eve ate flesh? What was the original diet?
Did you not hear my opening statement? I said that Noah... Stop interrupting me. In the opening statement, I said Noah was given permission to eat meat.
Now, that's actually a punishment because God caught him sacrificing animals.
No, that's your made-up interpretation. It's not a punishment. You understand this would lead to Marcionism, right? So, did Jesus attend Passover? No, they don't. You're making this up. You can't cite. I just gave you Hippolytus. Who says that you're wrong.
Church fathers were vegetarian?
You can't name one.
That's not true.
I mean, I'm citing you. I'm citing you right now. Origen is a heretic, and so is Tertullian. So you cited two heretics.
Okay, you call them a heretic.
No, they're not accepted by the church. Either Catholic or the Catholic and Orthodox churches reject those two people as heretics.
Canonized vegetarian saints.
There might be monastic people who've taken a vow to eat that kind of a diet, but that's not the same thing as whether or not God permitted it, or whether Jesus was a vegetarian. Did Jesus attend Passover?
He did not eat lamb. He proposed bread.
Is he the Passover lamb?
Sure, that doesn't
okay.
Mean he ate lamb.
Who gave the law in Exodus? Who gave the law? Who gave the?
Listen, the majority. Be quiet. The majority.
Don't tell me you're out of here. We're done. Tell me to be quiet on my. Who gave the law?
I'm hearing myself.
Who gave the law in Exodus?
Give us a fair say.
So you're not going to answer. You're not going to answer. Who gave the law in Exodus? Did Jesus give the law?
God gave the law.
Is Jesus God?
Not one and the same.
Yeah, but he was the one in John 5. He says he was the one at Mount Sinai giving the law.
Okay.
Yeah, so you're an idiot.